If you break your iPhone 10 screen, crack the glass anyways, all you need is a hairdryer to fix it. That doesn't sound right. Hey friends, Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair with the weekly live stream. Greetings to everyone who jumped on already. Good to see you here. And for everyone who put up with last week's terrible audio, I hope that this doesn't look like Kung Fu Theater again, but there was actually a problem with my FaceTime cam on this MacBook that I'm using, and right now it's running, actually it dropped down. It was using a lot of resources earlier, so hopefully there's no lag. If there is, let me know. Throw something in the chat. I'm going to try to talk about all of the topics up front and then answer questions and engage more in the chat. But do feel free to say hello and post any comments or questions that you have up there. So I saw something that was really sad to see, and probably sadder still that some people will believe this. So there are a couple images that were floating around. I think that they've been taken down. I may be wrong about this, but I was told that they came from 4chan. And this is some serious level troll right here. Equilibrium technology on the iPhone 10 senses hard surfaces when dropped at greater than 4 feet and triggers gyroscope to land screen side up. Yeah, nice wishful thinking there, but you remember all the old concept videos we would see when an iPhone was being released, where they had little jet packs that came out of the side and levitated the phone so it didn't hit the floor? Well, obviously this thing does not sense equilibrium and land screen side up, and actually it would be unfortunate if it did, because what it's looking like right now is that the back panel on this thing, just like the iPhone 8, is going to be much more expensive and labor intensive to repair than the screen itself. And that's kind of the good news we found through various videos, and I don't want to state this as fact, so please don't quote me, but from what I've seen in the teardowns, it looks like as long as we preserve the Face ID hardware that's built into the screen and transfer it over to the new replacement screen, we shouldn't have any problems with the Face ID, but of course we won't be able to replace those. So it's going to be a bit like the Error 53 situation, where if you damage the hardware that's in the screen of your iPhone 10, no one can help you but Apple. And a little bit later I want to get into the rates as far as what they're going to charge you to do that. And over here on the side, these are just some topics that I kind of wanted to give everyone a preview for, so if you're just coming across the channel for the first time, you'll have an idea of what's on the agenda today. And as usual, I will put links to all the sources of this information down in the video description, so you can always read this stuff on your own and get more of the details. Now, the one that I wanted to show you is this one right here. This is just mean. Did you know, to cut back on the cost of manufacturing replacement screens, the iPhone 10 will use a screen containing thermoplastic material. This will allow Apple technicians to simply heat up your screen to repair anything from scratches to major cracks, while costing Apple next to nothing. Okay, that's just mean. And at the same time, you kind of think, well, if somebody really believes that, maybe they deserve what they get. I know that people are going to be holding their hairdryer up to the screen when they break it, and obviously it's not self-healing. That's not going to work, and that's just really just mean for somebody to do that. Aloha. So I've been kind of trying to figure out exactly what format I want to stick with on this. It's getting to the point where there's so much to talk about that it's hard to cover it in an hour, and I don't want to keep everybody here all day long. So if you want to play me in the background and go about your day, which is probably what most people do. I don't think everyone's tuning in to see my face, but hopefully you get something useful out of the information that I put on here. I think I'm either going to have to expand this to more live streams, or maybe do a 3 to 5 times a week thing where I just push out information about what's going on in the marketplace and in the phone repair biz, because there's just so much stuff to cover and there's no way to get to all of it. So real quick, let's see. Please, translator, your words. I am going to jump over to the comments here real quick, because I have some stuff on here. Hawaii Sidecar, how you doing? Hey, I checked out your Facebook page. That's really cool. If you want to give me your permission, I am happy to publish projects like that HTC that you did. It came out looking really cool, and I don't have any problem sharing that with other people, but I always try to make sure that I'm not stepping on anyone's toes in the ways of what belongs to them. So if you want to drop me an email or a comment on my YouTube page or whatever, that'd be cool. This gentleman is, my understanding, the only repair shop in the Cook Islands for phone repairs, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, my day is fixing phones in paradise. Lucky you. Please, translator, your words. I think that's a request to translate. And here's the thing about that. It's very labor intensive to do the subtitles on this. I will do everything I can to make this available in different languages. But it's tough. It takes a long time. If you hit the closed captions, I think you can use an auto translator. But you can also, as a YouTube user, go in and contribute to translations if you happen to be bilingual. So if anybody speaks another language, you're welcome to jump onto my videos and type that stuff out. If it's in a different language, there's not a lot I can do because I only speak the English, unfortunately. I like your job. Thank you, Ennis. That's like a cat. Sorry, I just want to go through these real quick. Just got trained in NZ, New Zealand, I take it that is. For ASC for Samsung. Cool. Awesome for you. So I'm going to bring the chat onto the screen here in a couple seconds. I had a few things that I did want to talk about here. Hopefully I will click the right button. I think I've got everything figured out here. There we go. All right, so I have a bunch of stuff that I've been looking at that I thought that you might be interested in. The first one here is Apple reminding iPhone X owners that they are using an OLED display. And why should we care about that? Well, if you've had a Samsung or ever seen a Samsung that's been in a store for, 6 months at a time and they have a little demo running on the screen, well, we get something called SBI or screen burn in, and you can occasionally pick up a good deal on a screen if you're willing to kind of tolerate some images that are built, burned into the screen. If you remember old TVs and video games, they used to do the same thing. If you left the same thing on your LCD monitor, you would eventually have a permanent image on there. Well, apparently they've come a long way as far as LCDs go, but in the world of organic light emitting diodes, apparently they're much more susceptible to that. So Apple has actually posted something where they're reminding people who buy the iPhone X, don't just leave your screen turned on. You won't be able to use the phone the same way that you did when they were using LCD technology, because it's actually going to be a short period of time before you'll end up seeing something burned into your display, and it will kind of just be a ghost image over anything that you're looking at. So that kind of sucks, but this is just something new, I think, for people who exclusively use iPhones to get used to, because they have stuck with LCD technology for so long. They've done a very good job with it as far as the Retina display and everything. It looks great, but there are some advantages and, of course, disadvantages to OLED, but they finally decided to go with this. So don't leave your phone turned on with the same image on there overnight. You're probably going to be very disappointed in the morning if you do. And I don't want to spend tons of time on the iPhone X today, because I know that's kind of what everyone's talking about. It dominates the news, and we went over some things, somewhat in depth last week. There are some things that I want to touch on briefly, because we've got some new information as far as teardowns and repairs and stuff like that. But beyond that, I don't want to spend this entire time talking about the iPhone X. I'm sure you're going to hear much more about it in the near future. Samsung will warranty the first screen burn-in, is what Hawaii Sidecar is saying. That's pretty cool. I don't get the feeling that that is something that Apple's going to do. So it sucks if you find out the hard way, obviously, on that one. Now, on this here, there is also a public service announcement from Apple that says, do not train your Face ID on your sibling's face accidentally. And I'm sure everyone out there is saying, I can't even count the number of times that I accidentally trained my Face ID on my sibling's face. I don't get that. Like, who does that? How do you accidentally do that? Well, here's what they're saying. If you have, you're playing around, and I'm sure people are going to be testing Face ID on animals and siblings and twin brothers, and actually one of them apparently already fooled it by using a twin. The Face ID uses an adaptive technology that over time will continue to recognize the changes in your face, because obviously we don't look the same now that we will several years down the line, which is funny because these phones really aren't designed. We already know they don't design them to last several years. They have a very limited life cycle. But what they're saying is, because of this technology and the way that it works and detects changes that are taking place in your facial layout, basically, that if you hold your Face ID camera or hardware up to someone who has similar features to you, and they fail the Face ID the first time, and you take the phone and then enter your password, apparently, the password is basically the override. So if your Face ID doesn't work, you punch in the password. Well, if you do that with someone who has similar features to you, when you enter that password, you're basically telling the phone that it should have recognized the face that you just held it in front of. So I don't know if it takes just a single time or several times, but apparently if you do it enough, what's going to happen is the phone is going to say, oh, you keep putting in the override password every time you hold your Face ID up to this other person. That must be something we should recognize, and pretty soon your sibling or whoever else is going to be able to open your phone by looking at it. So they're kind of warning people to stay away from that and not experiment too much with the Face ID, but I just have this feeling it's really not going to help too many people. iCloud, don't be surprised. This happens all the time, and it always makes me laugh when I hear people say, yeah, accidentally, exactly. When I hear people say that, oh my gosh, someone figured out how to hack an iPhone, to bypass the password, or to, somehow get around the security into the phone. And it seems to happen like every, 6 or 9 months or so, sometimes more often. Well, apparently it's happened again. There's a channel, it's called myicloud.info. And the reason I use this person's video is because, as far as I can tell, they were the first one to publish this bypass. I do not encourage people, obviously, to bypass iCloud for anything other than if it's their iCloud and they forgot what their password is. And that's usually not the reason people are trying to get around the iCloud. So by all means, I don't condone this. I'm not promoting it. But I do feel that it's important that we expose these vulnerabilities so that Apple will fix them. And as of the last time I checked, which is yesterday, I should probably check again, 11.1 was still the newest software available for my iPhone, which is the 7, which means that it would be vulnerable to this 11.1 bug, where you can basically circumvent the iCloud protection on a phone that's running that version of iOS. If you want to check it out, I will obviously put the link down in the video description after you get done here, because you don't want to jump over there right away. But if you want to check that video out, it's only about 3 minutes long. That's the other thing that I like about this video, is he shows you how it works, and he doesn't spend 15 minutes talking about it. He just basically shows you 1, 2, 3, here are the steps that people take. And again, when we find these sort of vulnerabilities, I think it's very important that we communicate this to Apple and that they get on the ball as far as fixing it. Because if you have an 11.1 device, you want to know that your iCloud currently is not protecting your phone should it become lost or stolen or end up in the wrong hands for some reason. And in this case, when the update comes out, and I'm very selective about what updates I put onto my phone, if you have an 11.1 device, you're definitely going to want to update to the patch when they figure out how to patch this one, because, your phone might end up actually being usable if someone comes across it who shouldn't. All right, so why does that keep flashing off like that? Because I am not that good at using a keyboard and talking at the same time. Only vulnerable if two-factor authentication is enabled on the locked device. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that. I'm just going to call you Playlist Gaza because that's a very long name to say. In fact, let's go ahead and bring the chat out here, because we don't need this anymore. And we certainly don't need... see, I did it again. I left the words up there. Okay, so I've got the chat up here now because I had a feeling we might get some people commenting, and your information is quite useful, so thank you for adding that. I did mean to mention that. There's also a lot of bypasses that work with Siri enabled while your screen is locked, and I probably should mention that also. And I would foresee that in the future, this is probably another vulnerability. People seem to figure out ways to use Siri to get past the security on iPhones on a regular basis. I don't know how they do it. Like, you have to wonder how much time people have on their hands to just experiment with combinations of buttons and icons and, using the Siri feature. But eventually it's like they always figure out this one backdoor that's there. And for some reason, Siri often seems to be involved. Apparently not this time, but if you want to deactivate Siri while your phone is locked, it's probably not a bad idea if you're concerned about that, somebody getting into it. Okay, where are we? We are on the iCloud. And now, for my favorite part, since we repair phones, many of us, for a living, and since anyone who owns one of these phones will want to know what they're up against when it comes time to fix that screen, because if you've watched some of the drop test videos, it appears as though the display on the iPhone X is the most vulnerable side. So you really wouldn't want your phone to land backside down. You'd really want it to go face down so that you can replace a screen. They can do that, whether you go to a third party or if you end up going to the Apple Store or wherever it is, because when it comes to the back panel, I think you're going to be very disappointed. So as far as the screen costs go, let's take a look at this real quick. And some of this information was available last week, and some of it I did not include, or it wasn't up there for whatever reasons. Right now, at the moment, if you've got an iPhone 10 and Applecare, which means you paid $100 up front, and you need to get your screen repaired, it's going to be $29, which, you know, $129 overall, that's tough to beat right now until we start getting some sort of screen refurbishing, you know, line on that, or a supplier, or somebody comes in as a third party and starts making those screens. So for right now, you know, when a customer comes to me, I tell them, here's what you have to pay me to replace a screen, or you can go to Apple and go through that process. Well, if you don't have Applecare, you're looking at $279. So that jumps up a bit, right? And it might even be approaching very soon the cost that we will be able to offer to our customers for a repair. But here's the really crazy thing about this. Remember that Applecare is going to cover your screen damage. To the best of my knowledge, I think they might cover battery replacement, and that's about it. That means that anything else that happens to your phone, even if you have Applecare, you are going to have to spend some money out of pocket. And they call these other types of damage. And wait until you see this. This really, really blew my mind. So Applecare, iPhone 10, $29 for the screen, $279 for anything else. Check this out. If you have an iPhone 10 and anything other than the screen is damaged, including the back glass panel, $549, with or without Applecare. If I'm reading this right, and I'm pretty sure I am, regardless of what kind of coverage you have on your phone with Apple, $549 for the back panel. And if you've seen the teardown videos, it's easy enough to understand why, because getting this thing apart, it looks like it was not designed for the back panel to be replaced, at least not easily. And now, this may change over time. Maybe they'll lower the price. I don't know. But if they don't, all I can say is this. I've heard that Apple has somewhere between $5 and $6 billion invested in their retail stores. So apparently these things cost a ridiculous amount of money to build. And by looking at these replacement costs on the iPhone 10, I have a feeling that they are planning to build many more, and this is going to be one of the sources of funding. $549 to put a back on your phone when you break the glass. So get a case, please. If you're not already tired, you know, I wish I could show this, but one of the things that really annoys me about the camera bump is you can't set your phone down level. It always rocks back and forth. You ever notice that? So if you get a case that at least comes out to where the camera bump is, you'll solve that problem. Not have to replace the glass, hopefully, but if you do, it's going to cost you. Okay, I want to take a break right now because comments are coming in and I don't want anyone to feel ignored. So if you're just coming here, I'll jump back on to the topics, but what's important to me is the interaction here, and that's why I like the live stream. So, Clayton, how are you doing? Good to see you on here. Alien Fix, I have not seen you for a while. There will be housing replacement parts for us to fix. That's a good news for us. And I agree. I think that the real money in repairs for iPhone 10 is going to be the rear panel, and we're going to see a lot of people walking around with broken back glass on their iPhones when they realize that their options are $549 or something in that neighborhood, and just say, you know what, I think I'll live with it. And obviously your phone is no longer water resistant once there's a crack in the glass anywhere, among other things, including, I believe, the adhesive under certain conditions. You know, if you live in a very arid climate, I have a feeling that the IP rating on any phone that uses adhesive to seal things together, it will be a compromise at some point. And, you know, even if there's a lot of moisture in the environment, some of that moisture has got to get in right along the edge, and we know what moisture does to adhesive. So, again, should you be maybe happy that your $1,000 phone is only designed to last a year or two, or, you know, they're hoping that you'll buy another one after that? Maybe. Cases stop the wireless charge. That's a good point. You know, I didn't even think about that. So if you've got an iPhone 10 with the glass back and you want to charge it wirelessly once you put a case on there, that is going to be a problem. Only if it's made of metal, playlist is saying, but I gotta tell you, I'm a huge fan of wireless charging, and I can't speak for the iPhone because I don't have the 10 or the 8, but with my Galaxy series phones, if I put any type of case on the back, it is very difficult to use the wireless charging. So I don't know, maybe they have a better receiver. I had a 3-coil Qi wireless charger that I set my Samsung on with, with a TPU case on the back, just a thin piece of plastic, and it made it very difficult to position the phone exactly right so that it would charge. So I would be curious to see, you know, it's actually a good idea for a video. We should test that. What kind of case can you use to charge your iPhone 10? Be a good question to answer. But just the thought of designing something that's made out of glass, and we know glass breaks. You know, it can be Gorilla Glass 15,000. I don't care. It's glass, obviously. If there was unbreakable glass, that's what your windshield would be made out of. Things are shatter-resistant and shatter-proof, but glass is glass. And in order to have that digitizer underneath that glass, it can only be so thick. And really, if it was any thicker, it's going to make the phone bigger. I'm a big proponent of tempered glass. I don't know if they have a tempered glass that's going to fit on the back panel. But if there is, I definitely get something on there. I would be interested to see, though, like what kind of cases are going to allow that wireless charging to take place. That would be a good one to know. And if you have a store and you're selling iPhones, I definitely want to have a variety of cases that are going to probably, hopefully, help people avoid that problem. Now, imagine as people come in, you know, every time an iPhone is released, when you know, we seriously have people come in within the first week and their phone is broken, and we tell them what the prices for a replacement screen is based on the availability, because it takes our suppliers to get them. And a lot of them have what I would call sticker shock. You know, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me $300. I think it was like $275 or $300 when the iPhone 6 was released to get that screen done, because we just didn't have any to buy. So we were getting OEM screens one way or another. When you tell someone that $549, or, you know, even if you tell them it's $200 to replace the back glass on their iPhone 10, I guess just get used to that conversation that we get to have all the time, because everyone's going to think you're trying to rip them off. And when we break it down, and feel free to use Apple's website, obviously, as a justification so that people understand this is what Apple charges for people to do this stuff. But it's a conversation that doesn't seem to be going away ever, I don't think. You know, the conversation we have with customers when we try to explain to them that, yes, it looks like just a piece of glass, but it is, in fact, far more sophisticated than that. Tim Sherman says, also seems like the iPhone 10 digitizer is like the LG models, whereas the smallest crack on the glass, the digitizer stops working. That's funny you said that, because that has always been one of the things that I couldn't stand about LG. People, you know, from a repair perspective, good news, because when people crack the glass, waiting until it gets worse isn't an option. But when me as a customer thinking about buying an LG, and I really wanted LG to kind of step up and be the number 3, which they seem to have failed at quite a bit on the last few generations at least. When your phone cracks and you cannot use the screen anymore, that means you have to fix it, and there's no choice. And if that's what the iPhone 10 is, meaning you have to fix it ASAP. You have to fix it if you want to use your phone. That's ridiculous. All I can say really is that one thing that I know about Apple is that they have hit an all-time high. I want to say as of yesterday, their stock has never been that high before. And if you own some, good for you. One thing that Apple has, you know, no one can argue with is that Apple knows how to make money. That is one thing that they are good at doing. Now, ethically, we may or may not agree with the way that they do that, but they do know how to make money. And it's really sad that I don't think a lot of people who, even the ones who saved up the $1,000 to go buy this phone, are going to be able to drop $550 to go fix the back when it breaks. But the thing that it really makes me wonder about is that we have every indication that the iPhone 10 is a huge success. People are buying it. People will continue to buy it. It's really eclipsed the iPhone 8. Nobody seems to really care about that anymore. It's all about the iPhone 10. So Apple has done it. They've sold a $1,000 phone. What comes next? What's next year going to be? What will the iPhone X or 10s or whatever it's going to be, the next generation? Is it going to be 1,200? Is it going to be 1,400? Is it going to be 1,500? I mean, really, the sky is the limit, you know, until people say, no, that's enough. And with the reputation that they have and the way that they're dominating the market, we might see like a $1,500 phone coming out real soon, like next year. It just blows my mind that if it were something you were going to use for 5 or 6 or 10 years will be one thing. But in many cases, people who buy the latest model want to get the next model 12 months from now. So I guess the good news is that they do retain their value pretty well, which is a positive for them. Playlist says, just check the Apple Store website. The cases specify that they are compatible with wireless charging. Okay, that's great news. So does that mean that you have to buy an Apple case, or is there a certain type of case? I'll definitely check out the website and see what they have to say about that. that would be good to know. I'm sure there are going to be some, I wouldn't imagine you can put an OtterBox on your iPhone 10 and use the wireless charging, so there's got to be some limitation to that, because the range on Qi is only, it's pretty short, as far as I know, unless maybe they've come up with some newer technology that works even better. All right, so we've got other costs, and I think we'll come back to that. Please feel free to put any comments or questions you have in the chat about the iPhone 10. I do want to move on and try to get through some more stuff. I always end up trying to keep this to an hour, and today I think I might actually be on target to do that. I don't want to take too much of anyone's day, but there are some other things that are going on, and I'm probably going to want to pull up my notes here that I think you might be interested in. So, the T-Mobile and Sprint merger is officially dead. Just like the American dream. I'm just kidding. I always hated that statement. The American dream is not dead. Why would anybody say that? T-Mobile and Sprint have been talking about merging. If you remember, a long time ago, T-Mobile wanted to sell to AT&T, and that kind of got shot down by several three-letter organizations that said, no, we don't want to create a duopoly, because if it's AT&T and Verizon, I think really at the time Sprint was very concerned about it, because they stood to lose the most, because they're kind of lower on the market share total than the other networks are. Well, it looks like T-Mobile and Sprint, or one of the two or both, have decided that they would not mutually benefit from this merger. And they also, from what I've read, it sounds like it was probably not going to be approved anyways. And one of the reasons that they give for this not happening is that if you take a look at these other carriers, you've got the two big ones, which are Verizon and AT&T. We also have T-Mobile and Sprint, who have a smaller market share, and for that reason they offer things that the other carriers don't really have to. So in order to basically be competitive, and especially to compete with each other, they'll come up with things like unlimited this or unlimited that, or family and friends, or a certain package for people. And by not going through with this merger, it sounds like that will continue to happen, which is something that should benefit everyone, just as a phone user, which is pretty much the entire population. We want to have this type of competition. We want to have as much competition as in the marketplace as we can, so that we don't have two big entities saying, okay, we'll just agree to charge everyone a ridiculous amount of money, and there's nothing they can do about it because they have to choose from the two of us. At least we have other dogs in the race at this point. We have 4 different carriers we can go with, and although I am not using T-Mobile or Sprint myself, no matter what it is that they're doing, I really hope that both of these companies keep their heads above water and stay alive and keep going. And we have every indication to think that they will. Actually, there's another merger going through with Sprint right now. They are apparently teaming up with a company that I haven't heard of. It's called Altice, and this is a French company. Apparently, they're very big in France. They're going to be coming into the U.S. and using part of the Sprint network to expand their footprint so that they can get into the cable network business. It's going to be in select areas, so it's not everywhere, but I imagine this will help Sprint to continue to be competitive. And as far as T-Mobile, to the best of my knowledge, they're still doing well. And again, one observation about them, the most loyal customers, I think, in the business. And everyone I've talked to who has T-Mobile says that their customer service is one of the strongest points that they have. So we kind of see differences from one carrier to another. One has a better network, one has a better this, one other has a better that. Lucas Tim's up there. Oh, you guys are talking to each other. Hello. Just subbed you. Awesome. Oh, you're talking to him, not me, right? Okay. So the other thing here is this guy, who I'm really just getting tired of seeing his face for some reason. I know that sounds mean, but he's always smiling, and what he's trying to do to eliminate net neutrality is just infuriating. Because he comes from Verizon, he's now at the FCC, and he wants to take away net neutrality. And as much as I have been tried to speak out about this to people, what I run into most often is that a lot of people really don't get what net neutrality is all about, or why it would be a bad thing for that to go away. And I finally heard a statement that made a lot of sense and was easy to understand, and I wouldn't say it's a 100% analogy, accuracy-wise, but it gets the point across easily. So when we talk about net neutrality, what the cable companies are saying is that if we do away with net neutrality, it's going to help people to encourage people to invest in the infrastructure and we'll have better cable service and we'll have better internet service all over the place. This is the argument that they're using. The other side of the argument is this. If we don't have net neutrality, cable companies can charge you according to what service you are using. So the analogy that I heard that made a lot of sense was this. Imagine if you have a cell phone and your carrier charges you according to the people that you call. So you can call this person for this rate, but someone else who's in the same area that they are, it has nothing to do with long distance. They have just decided that it's going to cost you more money to call that person. And of course, they'll tell you that anytime you call anyone that they want you to call, let's say we had ad-supported calls or something along those lines, those are going to be free because they want to encourage you or to steer you towards the services that they're selling and try to block out people who have competing services with them. So this is why, in my opinion at least, net neutrality is a good thing. We should have it, and having these huge corporations that have tons of money to lobby against it is really a threat to democracy in many ways. And they try to make it sound like it's not a big deal, but if you are like me and you have one choice for broadband, you're really at the mercy of that company, and it's going to be difficult to have competition for that to go away anytime soon. And if we do away with net neutrality, the same thing is going to happen to the services that you use on your TV at home, on your, potentially. And of course, their statement is, oh well, we would never throttle any of those services if we get rid of net neutrality. Well, I like the idea better that you can't, that it's not legal for you to pick and choose the type of download speeds I have based on what services I'm using. And when I'm not using something that you're making more money off of, then I have to pay more for it. It doesn't make any sense. So I hope, yeah, Ajit, I don't even know how to say the guy's name, Ajit or Ajit Pai, I think is how you pronounce it. So here's the thing about it, though. As politicians tend to do, they are apparently planning to roll this thing out the day before Thanksgiving, when most people are paying attention to other things rather than politics. So kind of sly, if you think about it. We're going to do this right before Thanksgiving, right before the holiday season, right before the biggest shopping day of the year, and hope that nobody really notices what's going on. And this is not to mention that there was a lot of news that came out about people making comments against net neutrality on the FCC website that they didn't even know that they made. So they apparently, or allegedly, had bots going to the FCC website and saying, yes, we want to do away with net neutrality, but they apparently were not in fact real people, and some of them were already deceased. So someone is not playing nice here, and there's not a lot that we can do because we don't get to vote on this kind of stuff, but there is actually a number that you can call and speak out against it. You can contact legislators in your area and talk to them and let them know how you feel about it, and let them know that if they want you to vote for them next time an election comes up, they need to be in favor of net neutrality. I will also post that down in the video description as soon as this is finished. And I really hope that this gets across the point that if you enjoy things like YouTube or Netflix or Hulu or any other number of things that you get through broadband, we need to make sure that companies can't pick and choose which ones are going to work for you or which ones you have to pay extra for. Let's keep the internet free. We pay enough for the access. We should be able to come and go where we want to for the most part. And Google Fiber, yeah, I really hate to say it. Google Fiber I thought was going to come in and save the day, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Who knows? Google has done some great things, and they've done some things that we probably don't all agree with. But getting internet service to Puerto Rico was pretty cool. Yeah, I was really hoping Google Fiber was going to be a thing, but it doesn't look like it is. So, again, please, if you can, take a minute later on. I don't have it right now. I have to go in and update everything, including the timestamps on this, so give me a couple hours. But if you come back or if you Google this, there are numbers that you can call to let people know. Just look up net neutrality, FCC, and contact your congressperson and tell them, this is wrong. If we don't speak up, they won't know the difference, but they'll still be getting the money from the lobbyists who are just taking them to lunch and buying them stuff and who knows what, and that's really, I think, how politics work anymore, unfortunately. So if you want the Essential phone, and you didn't already buy it, they pulled the same one that Apple did on the first iPhone, which I should have mentioned earlier, is not technically the 2G. It's the first iPhone, but it kind of became nicknamed the 2G. But the Essential phone dropped from $499 down to $299. So I'm sorry, it dropped from $699 down to $499. So if you've been thinking about getting the Essential phone, it looks like now is the time to do so. Apparently, they're saying that this doesn't have anything to do with a lack of sales, but I'm sure that's debatable as well. And I really don't know much about this phone. I'm curious. I'd like to get one in hand and kind of check it out and see, give it a test drive, or hear from any of you who own this phone. Let me know what you think of it. Obviously right now everything is in the shadow of iPhone and Samsung. So if you're not one of those, if you're not Apple or Samsung, not as many people are paying attention to your devices. But again, one thing that I think we'd all like to see is more competition in the marketplace. If cell phone equals iPhone in the future, that's going to be a terrible thing, because if everyone has an iPhone and that's it, guess who sets the prices? And you are really at their mercy at that point. So I wish someone would step up. If it's not LG, Motorola, or maybe Huawei, or one of the Chinese manufacturers will come in and make something that people really love and are willing to take instead of an iPhone. It could happen. I'm just riffing here, Let's see. So, excuse me. The Essential phone, last thing on the list, and then I'm going to go to straight chat and then just talk about a few things, and I'll be done in time. And my battery does not seem to be charging, so please stand by for just a second. My charger seems to have unplugged. And the thing about this studio is it is a battery hog. I'm down to 14% there. Okay, so, last thing on the list here that I want to talk about, and this is just kind of an interesting one. I don't know if there's any truth to this at all, but I keep seeing these articles that come out that say you need to stop carrying your phone in your pocket or your bra, radiation, etc., and so on. And nowadays it's so difficult to really know, because you have one study that says if you sleep with your phone within 2 feet from your head, there's an increased chance of tumors, and then you have another study that says no, there's no link between cancer and cell phone radiation. But the article that I read basically stated that if you have a phone in your pocket, because it's close to your body, that does cause an electromagnetic interference with the signal from the phone. And what they pretty much said is that your phone has to radiate more energy in order to connect with the network, because of the interference that's coming from your body. So if that makes sense, putting your phone in your pocket is not a good idea. Carrying your phone in your bra is not a good idea. And they recommend having it on a case, I guess, in your belt, or maybe just in a case so it's not directly up against your body. Again, it's so difficult to know. What happened here? What happened to my chat? It's so difficult to know if this stuff is accurate or not. And then, there's people talking about this being a cover-up by the cell phone carriers. They don't want to let the real studies out and tell people how bad phones are for them. And I got to say that if they are, I'm probably in trouble, because I've been using them since they went into production for a long time. Did not have Bluetooth or anything like that, and had the old school analog right here up next to my head. So if I get a tumor of some sort, I will let you know. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Okay, so that was pretty much what I wanted to cover. I did it in less than an hour. I'm happy. So let's get the chat. Actually, I have 2 chats open here. Let's do this. What is it with America and dead people voting all the time? Yeah, good question. And they seem to always vote for what benefits companies. Yeah, it's funny how that works. Follow the money, I think, is the saying. That seems to be it. Debris and port. All right, let's see if I can understand how. That's pretty cool. Well, I just lost my live chat just disappeared. That's weird. I gave my phone cancer. That's good. That's actually a good one. All right, so I did cover everything I wanted to. I also, for those of you who are subscribers, I did want to just kind of let you know that in the future, I want to continue doing the live stream on Monday, but I think a lot of this information here is probably better packaged in a video that is just created, it's on, people can watch it, and then I'm really kind of still rolling around some ideas as to how the live stream would benefit people the most. And most of the feedback that I've got has been, as far as channel content, has been tutorials. People want to see more how-to stuff on the phones, and I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more of that. Outside of that, I'm also open to suggestions on the live stream. If there's something that I can do on here that benefits people so that when they come on and interact and ask questions or whatever, we can do that as well. Oh, and I actually had some questions. If I can figure out how to get my browser source on here, I'll go through and maybe you can help me answer these if I do it right. Let's see. All right, so let's go to here and see if it's actually going to put this on the screen. This thing's still, I'm still learning how to use this deal here. I think we want browser source. And does that come on the screen? Nope, it asked me to sign in. Well, that's no good. And that was even weirder. All right, so here's the question. I got my S5 Neo repaired yesterday. Charge port as well. My volume and power buttons work just before, but my home button seems to be a bit more loose. Is there a gasket, guys? You two would know. On the S5 Neo, there should be an adhesive gasket, just like on the S5, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked at an S5 Neo for a long time, and if they transferred over your home button without that gasket, or if the adhesive is not sticky anymore, that could be a problem. So that is the first place I would check with that one. Thank you very much. I have a question. I have a question on whether this will work on my phone or not. This is a Galaxy S5 screen replacement. The screen does not appear cracked or damaged, but the screen gets really digital. The screen gets really digital and jumps around or gets frozen or refuses to light up when tapping I guess, the home or power button. The buttons won't light up either when the screen won't come on, but my notification light will work. Is it worth trying to fix? Yes, it's worth taking, if you can get the screen off in one piece and connect another screen and find out if the screen's a problem or the phone. If the screen is a problem and it's an S5, you will have to decide whether or not you want to spend the money that it costs to fix that thing, because in relation to how much the phone is worth, it may or may not be a good investment. I do like the S5. It's a great phone, but it's several generations back. So obviously, if you've got it on, got all the updates on it, it's not going to run the way that it used to. It's nice that it has a removable battery, but the value of the phone at this point is probably diminishing to very close to what the screen is going to cost you. Unless it was just a cracked screen, but the way that you're describing that it's jumping around, it's probably not going to. You could have some water damage or other physical damage in the phone, or just a bad screen. Micro soldering is not micro soldering. It's just technician work. If you're not a technician in electronic, don't do that. Okay. I'm not sure what that means. Great, great. Hey, emergency. Emergency. Will the memory in the phone be gone if I change the port? This question always blows my mind. If you change the screen or the charge port or the battery or the back panel or the case, on your phone, the memory won't go away. Nothing's going to change. Everything that involves a memory outside of an SD card, if you have an SD card in your phone, outside of that, you have a logic board, well, not a logic board, a circuit board, PCB inside of your phone, motherboard, if you want to call it that. Apparently, logic board is specific to iPhones. I just learned that recently. But that's where all of your information is stored. So as long as that PCB, that little green thing with all the components attached to it on the phone, stays where it is, you should not lose any of the memory unless you damage something in the process. Let's see. Nice video. I got a question. What does it mean if it beeps 3 times and shut off? This is in reference to a PlayStation 4, and I want to say that's a power supply, but it could also be something else. I would have to Google that one to get back to you, unless anyone on here does game consoles and can answer that question. If you have a PS4 and it beeps 3 times and shuts off, is that a white screen? I'd be curious to know what's on the screen and what kind of lights are coming on the console, but I'm going to have to get back to you on that one for sure. I have my iPhone 5S screen black hole LCD and also error 4013, which I believe is a NAND error, if I remember correctly. As it is in recovery mode when my sister gave it to me, and I went to the tech to have the screen replaced. Now they say the battery not working and charging flex. What could have been the problem? Can I fix, or do they just want me to pay higher? On an iPhone 5S, if I remember correctly, I'll have to look this up, but I believe error 4013 is NAND. I think so, and if that's the case, and you've got a bad LCD, I'd probably look at investing in another phone at this point. In fact, if it's a 5S, I'd be real close to deciding whether even if I want to repair that or not. But if you do, it's probably going to cost you more than they originally told you. Definitely more than what the screen was. I don't know what this comment means. Actually, I need to kick someone out of my country. They posted some racist something about my country and they're becoming famous. People are... I don't know what this means, Miss HBS. Anyways, enough of that. Yeah, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm really baffled as to some of the comments. I have it like I really want to help people, but I have a very tough time sometimes understanding what they're talking about. What is your estimates on how long it will be before the repairers can do iPhone 10 for a competitive price? I am going to say at this point, I would assume it's going to be much... If you want a definite time frame, I really can't tell you, but I want to say that it's going to be much sooner than it was in the last few generations because we have so many people stateside that are now doing glass-only refurbishing. So we should, and hopefully, depending on where you're located, if you can find someone who does screen refurbishing and make an arrangement with them to where you bring them iPhone 10 screens and they replace the glass for you, it could be as soon as next week. Now, if you're ordering them out of China or from a distributor here that's in the U.S. that's getting something from wherever, I think realistically it's kind of hard to say. The videos that I've seen with the drop tests look like the glass on the iPhone 10 is definitely going to break, just like every other iPhone there is. How much time it takes for those refurbished screens or those broken screens to get to a shop, for them to send them to a refurbisher, and for the market to really have a supply line going. Yeah, I'm really guessing here, but I'm going to say probably a couple months at least. And if you remember the last few generations, it was usually a few months before we got a reasonably priced replacement LCD. And because this is OLED, we're probably not going to have any third-party manufacturers for a long time, if ever. So it's going to be original screens that are getting refurbished. So I'd say, at least a couple months. Weird chat over there. Yeah, there's some... I don't know what people are talking about half the time. I've got to be honest with you. And sometimes it's a language barrier, and sometimes it's just, I don't know, weird phrasing. All right, so later on this week, I'm going to be making a small video. Curious, Hawaii Sidecar, and everyone else is in the chat. How many of you are doing micro soldering right now? Show of hands. No. Just type something in the chat. I'm really curious to hear. I've had a lot of people asking about that, and I'm going to be putting together more micro soldering videos and kind of give everyone a tour and show the equipment that I have and what I think for the money is probably the best value if someone's planning to get into that. Now the catch here, of course, is that the iPhone 10, if you haven't seen it already, and I'm sorry I don't have a graphic for this one, but if you look it up, the logic board in the iPhone 10 is crazy. It is actually several layers. I believe it's 3 layers total, but 2 main layers that are sandwiched together and are soldered together on individual points all the way around the perimeter. There's still some conjecture as to whether those are actual vias that connect the two boards so that they can communicate with data, or if they're just all connected to ground and they hold the two together. I've heard from several different people who are much more knowledgeable than me, and they're still not really in agreement as to what those are on the outside. However, there is a YouTube channel, and I'll have to look up the guy's name. I think it's Glon, Glon, and this guy takes everything apart, and he has already separated those 2 layers of the logic board. But the problem with that, of course, is that once you do that, how do you do any testing unless they come up with some sort of jig that we can kind of plug both sides of the logic board into so that they can communicate, because you don't want to solder that thing back together and take it apart every time you swap out a component to try to figure out what the problem is. So good time to get into micro soldering for a lot of things. For the iPhone 10, wow, I hope that someone comes up with a real efficient technique for troubleshooting and repairing these things, because we know they're going to be coming in damaged. What does that mean? I'm going to start touch IC repair. Okay. Got a new scope. Awesome. Did you get an M scope? Double boom, or the boom scope, I hope, because I got to tell you, had I thought ahead better, I would have got mine. My microscope is fixed and stationary, and I need to get a boom to attach to it because it makes me insane. And when I make this video on my equipment, I'll show you exactly why you shouldn't buy hopefully you didn't buy the same microscope that I did. And when you talk to a microscope salesperson, keep in mind that they are not micro soldering professionals. So a lot of things that they think will work for us is not necessarily going to be the most efficient. Already doing charge ports and other things. Cool. That's Hawaii Sidecar. Alien Fix. The motherboard is like a big chip. Yeah, the motherboard is insanity. Playlist, do a TriStar, Meson, or Mason, however you prefer. Connectors, jumpers, need more training with diagnostics though. Yeah, same here. I think that a lot of us are probably in the same position when it comes to modular components and micro soldering. With a certain amount of practice, they can be done. I'm amazed at how much we can actually do with hot air, and you don't even have to use the soldering iron in many cases. But when it comes to the diagnosis, that's the real brain part. That's where you have to understand electronics, and everyone says, well, you don't have to be an electrical engineer. It probably wouldn't hurt, but you'd probably be doing other things besides phone repairs. And that's where I really have a challenge, is kind of putting together a diagnostic kind of flow chart, because a lot of what I do is training other people to repair phones, and I've got to have a good understanding of how to diagnose electronics. Finding a short on a board is one thing, using freeze spray to locate hot spots, but when it comes down to, well, the phone just doesn't do this, and I need to understand that circuit, that's where I'm really at this point in my career, is, educating myself to be able to troubleshoot that kind of thing. When it comes to, oh, the touch doesn't work, it's an iPhone 6 Plus, good chance it's going to be one of these chips. If we swap the screen out, if the phone's fake charging, we have a pretty good indication it's a TriStar. But beyond that, it becomes much more complex, obviously. And I got to start using my brain on that one. Yes, Amscope 400, cool. Best I could afford. Raro, grab a 0.5 Barlow lens. Yeah, if you don't have the 0.5, consider the 0.7. I bought the 0.5 with mine also. Definitely gives you a comfortable working distance. But I shouldn't say that. If you're going to be recording video with your repairs, the thing about the 0.5 is it is still very sensitive, so things tend to go out of focus real easily. So I shouldn't say that across the board, but if you plan on documenting your repairs, I'm thinking about switching to a 0.7 instead of the 0.5, because it gives you a little more room to work with before you start losing focus. And I would assume that would be the same effect on the oculars. So I guess just depending on how much magnification you actually need. But yeah, you'll definitely need the Barlow lens. I put mine together without it, and you're not working under that scope without the extra lens. So look at that. I got in under an hour today. Thanks everyone for coming by. Again, I'm going to leave the chat open for a few minutes in case anyone has questions, comments, wants to add anything on here for me. I'll be back again next Monday, 2 p.m. It's always a pleasure talking to you and chatting with you. And I'll have some new stuff in the works. It will be coming out soon. By all means, anyone who wants to say, hey, here I am and I fix phones, you're absolutely welcome to not spam, but put in the chat for sure. If the power button doesn't work on an iPhone 6, it could be something besides the cable. Could it be, if the power button doesn't work on the iPhone 6, it could be something besides the cable. Absolutely, we learned that one. Cool. All right, so good seeing you all. I will be figuring out how to use this one of these days. There it is. That's what I was looking for. I'll leave the chat open for the next couple of minutes, and then I'll be signing off, and I'll talk to you next time.